Welcome back, focused learners. Okay, so today's explainer is about an event that, frankly, shifted global power dynamics in the blink of an eye, or more accurately, over the course of a single day. Recently, one solitary Japanese warship sailed right into one of the most hotly contested waterways on Earth. And you know what? The world's largest navy, at least by asset count, just sat there. They watched and did absolutely nothing. We're going to break down exactly how and why this went down. Okay, let's dive into this. 14 hours, just let that sink in. That is exactly how long the Japanese destroyer, the JS Ekazuchi, spent just loitering inside the Taiwan Strait. And the craziest part? Zero Chinese military response. No pushback. This wasn't some quick, accidental pass in the night. It was a highly deliberate 14-hour maneuver right in the middle of incredibly tense waters. When you look at the source analysis, the contrast between the two nations here is just stark. You've got China's response, which was, honestly, completely passive. They tracked the ship, they watched it, and they issued a statement. That's it. But on the flip side, Japan's action was highly assertive. They stayed for those 14 hours, and this is the absolutely crucial part. They left entirely on their own terms, not because they were pressured out, but simply because they decided it was time to go. To really grasp the sheer magnitude of this event, here's our agenda. We're going to trace the ripple effects from the micro level all the way to the macro geopolitical consequences. We'll hit the 14-hour transit, the JS Ekazuchi itself, Japan's military awakening, the geographic trap, and finally, the global ripple effects. All right, starting with Section 1, the 14-hour transit. To really understand why this specific transit matters so much, you've got to remember the context. This happened immediately after China had just wrapped up roughly 40 days of their own simulated blockade drills right in those exact same waters. Now, China boasts 841 naval assets globally. That massive numerical superiority is literally designed to deter anyone from entering their claimed backyard. Yet, Japan confidently deployed just one single destroyer. According to the analysis, this moment exposed a massive, visible crack in China's whole deterrence theory. Moving on to Section 2, the JS Ekazuchi. Now, what's really interesting about this is the specific hardware Japan deployed. There's a very good reason why picking a fight with this particular ship was a bad idea. The Ekazuchi is a multi-domain powerhouse. We're talking a top speed of 30 knots, it's packing an Otomalara 76mm gun, plus phalanx close-in weapon systems that can literally shred targets at 4,500 rounds per minute. Add in 8 anti-ship missiles, torpedo tubes, and 16-cell vertical launch systems. It is custom-built to handle aerial, naval, and subsurface threats all at once. The source argues that China calculated they just couldn't guarantee a clean win here. Which brings us to Section 3, Japan's military awakening. So, if we zoom out historically, this single transit is actually the most visible expression of a fundamental shift away from Japan's 70 years of strict pacifism. Just look at the progression. It starts with Shinzo Abe introducing proactive pacifism back in 2015. Then you have the launch of the Official Security Assistance, or OSA, mechanism in 2023, the JS Sazanami transit in 2024, right up to this 14-hour transit in 2026 under Prime Minister Takaichi. It's a clear, neutral timeline showing Beijing that a change in Japanese leadership does not mean a return to caution. And you know, the financial reality totally backs this up. Through that OSA program, Japan is actively arming like-minded partners along vital sea lanes. They're basically building a strategic network right on China's periphery. And this perfectly illustrates the explosive growth of that effort. $12.5 million in 2023, jumping up to $31.2 million in 2024, and then just skyrocketing to $116 million by 2026. That is a massive financial commitment. But Japan isn't just funding partners. They are dramatically upgrading their own hardware too. Step 1, upgrading their helicopter carriers, the JS Izumo and JS Kaga. Step 2, equipping each of those with 12 to 15 fifth-generation F-35B stealth fighters. And Step 3, integrating all that firepower with a fleet of 48 modern destroyers. The analysis points out that with this level of high-tech integration, the real combat capability gap between Japan and China's much larger fleet closes significantly. All right, Section 4, the geographic trap. So the crucial point is that hardware doesn't just exist in a vacuum, right? It exists on a map. And the map presents an existential problem for Chinese expansion. Enter the first island chain. This is basically a geographic barrier stretching from Okinawa down through Taiwan, acting as a natural wall between China and the open Pacific Ocean. For China to stop U.S. forces from reinforcing Taiwan, their naval vessels absolutely have to push through this chain. And sitting right smack in the middle of that wall is the Miyako Strait. It's a highly contested primary choke point between Okinawa and the Miyako Islands. If Japan were to theoretically decide to close this strait to Chinese naval traffic during a conflict, well, it creates an immediate, massive operational crisis for Beijing. Which sets up a profound strategic dilemma. Can China solve a two-front naval war? Because honestly, there's no clean option for them here. Forcing the strait open immediately triggers direct combat with Japan. But if they blockade it themselves, they end up tying up their own ships in a massive battle hundreds of miles away from Taiwan. And making that hurdle even higher is what's known as the Okinawa Trap. Okinawa is home to major U.S. military bases. We're talking 80,000 U.S.-affiliated personnel and nearly 30,000 active-duty U.S. military. According to the source, any attempt by China to neutralize this geographic hurdle means they'd be directly attacking American assets. That instantly triggers the U.S.-Japan Mutual Defense Treaty, unifying American political will for a maximum response. It's a massive tripwire. Finally, Section 5, the global ripple effects. So, if we zoom out to the macro level, how did this 14-hour standoff actually impact other global powers watching the Indo-Pacific? Well, the timing is incredibly revealing. Just 2 days prior, on April 15th, Russia sent these aging frigates over to China to project solidarity. But then, on April 17th, Japan deployed a cutting-edge destroyer directly into contested waters. It's a brilliant contrast. The source argues Japan intentionally undercut that Russian-Chinese messaging by demonstrating far superior freedom of action right in front of them. Furthermore, just days later on April 20th, the US, Japan, and the Philippines conducted joint military drills. Now, China did try to run its own drills to claw back the narrative, but frankly, it just highlighted Japan's networking success. As the source notes, every time China tries to project power in the Pacific now, it runs into this cooperative web, outmaneuvering Beijing's attempts to dominate the region. Which really brings us to the core thesis of this entire analysis, and it's a direct quote from the source. The era of Japan worrying about provoking China is over. Through highly deliberate actions, like sitting a destroyer in the Taiwan Strait for 14 hours, Japan has completely eliminated the old ambiguity of their military posture. It's an unambiguous new reality. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder. If deterrence by overwhelming numbers has visibly failed, how will global naval powers redraw the balance of the Indo-Pacific next? This explainer has given us a detailed view of the new reality on the ground and on the water. Keep this strategic dilemma in mind as we watch these geopolitical events continue to unfold. Thanks for joining us today. Keep learning, stay focused, and I'll see you in the next explainer.